Welcome to the Path Less Travel podcast. This week we feature the president of Industrial Metal Fab, Kyle Beaudway. Kyle, thanks for being with us today.
Greg, thanks for having me on.
It's going to be fun.
Looking forward to it.
Before we just jump into anything, man, we just had the solar eclipse happen. What were your thoughts?
It was cool. It was science. I like science. But there was a lot of media hype, a lot of hoopla. It came and went, and here we are.
And here we are.
Right?
And we've now turned the page, and we're on to the rest of our day. And
Yep.
hopefully not to talk about that a ton in social circles moving forward. But
Right.
before we jump into anything, what's one thing not a lot of people know about Kyle Beaudway?
Well, Craig, I'm a little bit of a nerd, especially when it comes to finance, the stock market, economics. A lot of people know me more of an athlete and the jock, right? But I'm actually a little bit of a nerd when it comes to that stuff. I'm very into it. Consumes a lot of my time. I find it very interesting as well. So there's an intellectual side to me that a lot of people don't know about.
So, like, when you're talking about time, how much time you put into, like, where's your focus? Like, are there certain different media channels or things that you really look into?
Yeah, outside of work is when I will read a lot of that. A lot of it I read in the evening when I'm trying to wind down a little bit. I like to stay very up to date on current events, what's going on in the world. These things impact us, maybe not directly, but indirectly. So I like to stay up on that. I'm always glued to the economy, what's going on here domestically, our stock market, and banking, and all these things, because I just think it's very integrated, and certain factors that happen over here in this corner can impact this. So a lot of it's just evening, kind of winding down, recap. Also, when I wake up in the morning, sometimes I'll read a little bit to get going in the morning as well. So that's kind of what I do. I don't have one media thing I love or swear by. I kind of just try to take it in and see what's going on, get a pulse for the world and the market.
So where does that come from? Where does that interest in finance and economics come from?
Well, I thought I was going to be in the finance world. Prior to my role now, I actually was in the banking world for quite a while. Prior to that, I was very intrigued with the stock market and being like a financial advisor almost. I think my dad actually got me interested at a young age. I took a liking to the stock market and asked a lot of questions about it. I remember as young as 7th grade with him, working, learning things, researching things, asking questions. And then I grew up in the 2000s when we had like the .com era and bubble.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a genius, Craig. It was so easy to make money back then, and then all of a sudden the bottom just falls out, right? So I've learned, not that I was heavily invested, but I learned some lessons over the years, and then lived through the 08, 09 era as well. So we're fairly young guys, but we've been exposed to some events that some people only see once in a lifetime, right? So those are interesting to me. As bad as they were, it's a learning lesson. It was something I always file away when I'm running my personal life, the business, and all that, because those days might be back. History repeats itself. So.
Well, you talk about history, you talk about interesting things. I think the story of your company is very interesting. We're looking at, it's the second, third generation?
Third generation.
Third generation
Yep.
in South Bend, Indiana. Walk us through what Industrial Metal Fab is, its history, and where it's at today.
Right. I'll back up even to that, Craig, because coming out of school, I was third generation. The odds were against me on that. I was coming back to South Bend, which people said was a dying town, and I was going into manufacturing, which people said was dead in this country. So I kind of feel like I did what everyone told me wasn't going to work and not to do. But here we are today. But Industrial Metal Fab had a really solid foundation. I'm third generation. My grandfather, Jim Beaudway, started Industrial Metal Fab in 1964. He worked for a larger steel company here in town that was called Edwards Iron Works. They sold out, and he had out-of-town owners come in, and he kind of started to see the writing on the wall, what was happening there, and decided to branch off and give it a go himself. So he literally took a second mortgage on his house and borrowed some money from a couple personal friends to get Industrial Metal Fab going. And those are some things that I don't forget when I'm there working, making decisions, and living my life, because if it wasn't for some of those risks that he took on and chances he took, we probably wouldn't be where we are today. But after that, my father and my uncle, Monty and Mark Beaudway, were second generation, and they took Industrial Metal Fab kind of from this small, call it mom and pop fab shop, to more of a national player in terms of manufacturing. We started to become suppliers to some large OEM customers nationwide, and that kind of started to take Industrial Metal Fab to that next level, I would say. And then I came in 2010 into the business and inherited a very solid foundation, but saw some opportunities to make some changes in our customer base, had some plans for growth and expansion, then also start to modernize certain aspects of the business to make us a little more efficient and competitive. But Industrial Metal Fab is a medium to heavy plate fabricator. We also have the advantage of having a machine shop as well right next door. So there's a lot of metal fabricators, there's a lot of machine shops, but not a lot of them doing it together. We don't really do any sheet metal, thin stuff. We are more heavy to medium plate. We go up to 6 inches thick on steel plate. So we're doing a lot of big, complex parts for customers that are in the construction, mining, agricultural, material handling, forestry, crane industries, stuff like that. So no automotive, no RV, but big, heavy things.
Now, you've had the president title for a couple of years now.
Yep. 2020, I assumed the role of president.
So 2020.
Yep.
So if anybody remembers what happened around 2020, COVID did, and you're leading through that.
Yep.
At a young age.
Yep.
What in the world was that like?
Craig, I tried to block that part of my life out, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I do have some memories. Just to back up, I was thrown into a position beginning in January of 2020 that wasn't planned. It wasn't really a transition that we anticipated. My uncle retired in 2018. I assumed his role as vice president. My dad was still president working in the business. He went down to Florida for the couple months. He was scheduled to fly back in March, and the pandemic hit. He got stuck down there. So I was 35 years old, leading 35 people through the pandemic. And it was very challenging, very challenging. There was no chapter in any of my business class textbooks that said, when the pandemic hits and you're a brand new leader, here's what you do, right? So it was, a lot of it was me learning on the job, right? The biggest advantage I had was I got the company together and communicated with them as often as I could. I knew that if I didn't stay ahead of this, people were going to fill in the blanks and create their own messages. And there was a lot of what I call noise going on at that time. You had the media, you had fear, you had the unknown, right? And so the one thing I didn't want to do is start sending people scattering, panicking, all that. So I got the company together a minimum of once a quarter, most of the time more often, and I would just basically give them updates on everything I know, from business to rules to whatever's going on. I mean, you remember all the stuff going on. It was crazy. But I told the group day one that I was going to keep these doors open unless someone made me close them. And if someone made me close them, they better have a very good reason to make me close these doors. I also remember one of my good friends asking me, what is your goal, or what would success look like coming through this pandemic? And I said, well, to be honest, my goal is to keep everyone on the payroll and not take a penny out of anyone's pocket. And to me, that would be what I consider success, given what I didn't really know was going to happen at the time. But I did know this is America, and we get through it. And I did know there was going to be quite a bit of opportunity on the back end if I was able to keep this group together and we were ready to hit the ground running when things got back to normal. So that's why those two were so important to me. It's very easy to lay everyone off, go collect free money from the government, all that, but there's a huge hidden cost to rehire those employees and train them. And the amount of time you lose is often not measured by these businesses, in my opinion. So yeah, we carried a heavy payroll through some very rough months. We had a lot of red months the back half of 2020, but we kept everyone on the payroll. We had people painting, landscaping, but if you wanted to come in and work, we'd find something to do. And I think that actually helped my role as a leader because it showed I had a plan. We were a team. There was no individuals. I wasn't picking who got paid and who didn't.
Right.
And I said, we can either all sacrifice a little and get through this together as a team, or if we want to start being selfish, then we're going to have to start making decisions. And so I think that helped me a lot as a leader, getting the group together, laying out a plan, and saying, top to bottom, we're in this together.
I think you've got a lot to share in knowledge and wisdom to provide for young leaders. Just hearing you tell that story of ways to build trust with your team. Now, obviously, you just highlighted some of the things that you did to build trust during that time period. Let's rewind the clock a little bit before that. What were some things that you would do as a third generation to build trust as you're looking to take that next step within the company?
Yeah, that's a good question, Craig, because coming into a family business with the same last name as the owners,
right,
pretty much got a target on your back, right? And to even further complicate that, I came from a banking finance world and knew nothing about manufacturing, right? So I had my work cut out for me. I spent the first 6 years at Industrial Metal Fab working just off the shop floor, shipping and receiving. I would literally volunteer to help out in any aspect of the business, whether it was factory or front office, anytime anyone needed help, because that was a way I got to learn a different part of the business, right? So that was one thing. I wasn't afraid to go stand next to the guys in the factory, run parts, push a broom, help move parts, forklift, you name it. So I kind of took the approach where I'm not going to come in thinking I know everything, because I knew I didn't, and I wasn't going to be able to fool those people either. They've been doing this their whole life. So I kind of came in and took the approach of being a sponge. I kept my mouth closed, and I tried to work hard, and I tried to not give anyone an excuse to make any of those judgments or assumptions about me, right? It's hard to argue with hard work. So that's what I did. I put in solid 6 years out there, and I think that slowly started to break down those barriers between owner and friend and coworker, right? And everyone took different amounts of time in that, but I tried to always be there to help someone. If I didn't know the answer, I would try to track it down. I would listen to what they have to say, at least. And I think a lot of that helped as I started to transition through the front office. People knew I was serious and I was here for the long haul, not just passing through to collect a paycheck because it was a family business.
Which what you're saying is that when you're talking about culture, like things that you did as an employee and things that you do now as a leader to build culture. Talk to us about the culture at IMF. I mean, I know we've had conversations in the past of some longevity of employees. I mean, where does that come from? And just talk to us about that.
Yeah. Industrial Metal Fab is actually a little unique because we have some very long-term employees. We have some second-generation employees. We just retired a shop foreman about a year ago who had 48 years at Industrial Metal Fab. He learned to run the press from his dad on second shift as an 18-year-old.
Wow.
And worked his way up. We still have quite a few longevity, long-time employees there. And that goes back to not me, but that was my dad and my uncle. They created a culture, and we tried to treat people like family there. I mentioned earlier the cost of rehiring, training, when you have that revolving door, it's not good for your culture. So we tried to treat people fairly at the company. We tried to have fair benefits for people, and quite frankly, everyone top to bottom follows the same rules at Industrial Metal Fab. I take the same amount of vacation as the newest person hired there based on seniority at the company. And that's something I believe in because it goes back to that culture and team thing. How can I ask someone of someone when I don't hold myself to that same standard, right? So I try to lead by example. That's hard work. That's putting in the hours, all that stuff. And I think it kind of starts to transfer, throughout the company. Like I said, people see that and realize I'm serious. We laid out a vision. We've grown. We've invested in the company, and it's starting to, kind of spread through the area. Industrial Metal Fab's kind of been this quiet business here on the west side of South Bend for a while, but we're starting to branch out a little in the community, and the word's getting out a little bit about us, and it's good because it's helping us attract that next generation of workforce and employees and things like that. But culture is very, very important, and I think it's one of our strengths in Industrial Metal Fab is our culture and our longevity of our employees.
So then what is next for IMF here locally or regionally or nationally?
Yeah, good question, Craig. As soon as we stop thinking about next, we start dying, right? So we've invested heavily in our manufacturing space and equipment the last 3 years. We basically doubled our capacity. We had 2 buildings. We now have 4 buildings all in a row. So we've acquired 2 buildings in the last 2 years that are next door to us. And then we've basically doubled all of our capacity in our manufacturing shop, invested heavily in equipment. And that's really set us up well for growth. The area we need to address now is the front office. So we're currently working through a massive office remodel project that's going to really allow us to grow at the location we're at, not just in the shop and the factory, but also the front office. We need to add a few people in the office to keep up with our recent growth, and we want to be able to have a nice place to put them, an environment, and like I said, attract that next generation. So that's what we're focusing on now. We're actually having conversations now about potentially expanding our machine shop. We're seeing a ton of demand for our machining capabilities, and we've basically filled our machine shop full of equipment, so now we need to add on to that before I can continue to add equipment. So we have one major office remodel project in the works right now. It'll be done by year end. Then we're going to look at expanding this machine shop possibly yet this year still. So those are the 2 major things we're doing, but I think they'll really set us up for success at our current location and keep IMF competitive globally.
Well, setting someone up or something up for success is important. How would you set the next leader up, the next leader up for success that's navigating similar waters as you did years ago? What would you tell a younger Kyle or just a young leader?
Yeah, good question, Craig, because when I assumed the role as president, I inherited a solid business financially and business-wise. So my initial instincts were, don't mess this up, right? So I made decisions that were safe and comfortable, but I think it was costing us a little bit in the beginning. I was a little hesitant to take on some risk because I didn't want to make a mistake. I didn't want to mess things up, right? But if I wouldn't have taken some risks, we wouldn't have grown and evolved to where we're at today. So, a younger me, I would have told myself, believe in yourself, your people, your processes, the product we're creating, and you can do it. You can take some chance. You can take some calculated risk. But just staying in that comfort zone is the easy thing to do, right? Stepping out of it's what's challenging. It goes against your human nature and all that. But if I could tell myself younger, I would say believe in yourself and the company and the people.
What about some habits as a leader or just as an individual that you have throughout the course of the day? I mean, do you walk the floor at a certain time of the day? Do you have team meetings that are regularly? Like, what are some habits that you've instituted personally or within the culture of the organization?
Yeah, I I struggled when I made that jump, Craig, from factory to front office. I struggled letting go of the factory side of it, being involved, having my hands on products, seeing it going out the door, all that stuff. And that was a change I had to learn to adapt. But I never wanted to lose touch with the factory. So I walk the factory floor daily. It's not the same time every day, but I'm out there every day. I always make it a habit. If we have a new employee, I'll go introduce myself. I don't tell them what my role is. I just tell them my name. If you need anything, let me know. But I want people to feel welcomed, and I also want them to know that they have a resource if they're not getting answers or help. I can help them. So I always make it a habit in my day to go out and interact with some people on the shop floor. It's a quick, how you doing? If I know they have kids in sports, how'd baseball go? How'd soccer go? Things like that, or if they like a sports team, something like that. And that was something that people talked to me about when I came into the business about my grandpa. He knew a little something about everyone, and I think it really helped that culture we were talking about. So I don't want to lose touch with the hourly guys. I'm out there interacting with them on a regular basis. In terms of management, we get together once a month. We do a look back, a look forward, basically. And then we have some, one-off meetings here and there, things like that. Meet with some, estimating and salespeople, give some updates. If material is a very large part of our business. Steel prices fluctuate daily. It's a traded commodity. When you're dealing with 3, 4, or 5-inch steel, it adds up quick. So sometimes we got to, get together and readjust our approach with material prices changing, things like that. But ultimately, Craig, I think if you ask my staff, I'm a preparer. I prepare to death for everything. You will never catch me unprepared for something. I get the company together once a quarter. We go over the quarter as an entire company. We talk about bonus, future, looking back, quality, sales, things like that. But Greg, I start preparing for these meetings a couple weeks in advance, and I come with notes and I have a plan and I know what I'm going to say. So I really believe in being prepared for anything I approach in business, whether it's a simple meeting or a potential new customer lead or anything like that. So preparation is big for me. And then I put in the time. I arrive early. I'll stay late. I work some Saturdays, things like that. But I never want to be what I call the bottleneck at my company, right? Because I'd rather be golfing and put this off. I don't want to be that person. I want to get it done, move it up, and I want to set up our people for success. And that's how we succeed as a team. And I believe if we all keep pushing in that direction, the company runs a lot smoother.
You're here at Gibson. We work with a lot of companies, and one of the challenges is the perpetuation plan. And especially as you start to look at handing the baton, passing the baton to the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, it's common to hear that things you're talking about, hard work, preparation,
Mm-hmm.
are just not there with the next generation to take over the family business.
Right.
So why is it there for you? I mean, what drives you each and every day to be at this level where your foot is on the gas pedal,
Right.
constantly?
A couple things, Greg. Being that it's a family business and I'm third generation, there's pressure on me. I think about my grandpa, I think about my uncle, and I think about my dad often. And they put in a lot to get us here, and I never want to lose sight of that. So the legacy part of it motivates me.
Yeah.
Pressure is a privilege, right? And that's what motivates me to prepare is the pressure, things like that. So that's a big part of it. And then, my reputation. What are people going to say about me after I'm gone? Did he mail it in and just collect a paycheck and, drove the company into the ground? Now 45 people are out on the streets of South Bend because I didn't take it seriously. That's not the legacy I really want to leave. So it's my family name, my personal reputation. that drives me, my work ethic. But I think, my parents really, in the upbringing of me, taught me hard work. And it wasn't just a family business. The family business really wasn't an option for us as kids. We were told to go do our own thing. And looking back on it, that was smart. So my parents, raised me to, no matter what you're doing, and I don't care what you do in life, but work hard at it, right? Commit to it, have that work ethic, and be the best you can at it. And I think that's what motivated me. You and I spent a lot of time on the hardwood together, and we worked hard at that, right? And those habits, creating them, sports at a young age created those habits, right? And I feel like I transitioned a lot of that to the business world now, and I think it really set me up for success to have that work ethic, to be willing to put in the time, and get to where I want to get.
You said pressure is a privilege, and when that builds, you've got to have a release,
right?
So how do you stay sharp? How do you sharpen your axe, or how do you kind of recover or balance this hard work that you're talking about?
Yeah, and as you know, Craig, it's not always easy, right? Business leader, family man, husband. So yeah, you got to wear hats. Coming into the family business, I'll never forget one thing my dad told me was, we're father, son first, right? And so we might not agree on everything here, but we got to be father, son outside of here. So he kind of taught me at a young age to check it at the door, right? And so, there's some bad days, there's some tough days, but I try to leave it at my office, and I go home, and to see those kids waiting for you at home, smiles on their face, they don't have any clue what kind of day you had.
Yeah.
And it completely makes me forget about some of those stresses and things in the office, right? So my family's big to me. I try not to take work home with me. I try not to dwell. I try not to let it impact. I don't tell my wife at the time. I'll tell her after the fact. But there's some multi-million-dollar projects and decisions and things I'm stewing over, and I think it's success if she doesn't know that that's on my mind and that's what's going on, right? And so I'd really try to have that separation where I can be a family man. When things get really hard and really stressful, Craig, I hit the ground and I go for a run. It clears my mind. It gets me outside. And there's something about running, to me, it's just me and my mind, right? And so it relieves stress, it's exercise, but it's also a mental therapy for me. So there's times when I'm stewing over something, tough decision, or trying to figure something out, I'll go for a run. And a lot of times it will bring some clarity. I also never want to rush into decisions. It's easy when, maybe you lose a key employee and there's emotion involved and, panic, and you want to, okay, well, we're going to do this right now. Well, I always try to sleep on it. If we're making a big deal, making a big investment or purchase, I always want to sleep on it one night. And if I feel the same way the next morning, the decision's pretty clear to me. But I try to remove emotion from it, and I try to, think with a clear head as much as I can. And the more information, time, facts I can gather, the better I feel about my decision. And I told my people this day one when I assumed the role of president is, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to get every decision right. There's no way. But we're going to learn. I'm going to make the best decision I can with the information I have at the time. And I can tell you why I made the decision even. But I won't get them all right. I can promise you that.
I've got two final questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
You've mentioned your dad. You've mentioned your parents. Who's one or two mentors in your life that have been a catalyst in your growth, but then also maybe one or two things that you took from them or just a lesson learned?
Yeah. Early on, my high school basketball coach, Dean Foster, was very influential in my life. And he wasn't just a basketball coach. He was a mentor. And it was more important the type of people we were in the community, in the classroom, than anything that happened on the basketball court. And that's rare to see these days from a coach. And that was something I learned early on. He came from the old school Bobby Knight, Mike Krzyzewski, military style coach, and it instilled a lot of discipline in me, a lot of discipline in me. And little things I do throughout the day, I think about that, and I try to small things when no one's watching, doing them with excellence, because it sets the tone, right? And the type of person you want to be. So he was very, very influential in me as a person, as a young man growing up in high school. Teaching me what was important, teaching me how to be respectful of people, my parents, teachers, and a good person in the community. Then as I got a little older and got out of school, my uncle Monty was very influential to me. He was actually the one that came and recruited me to come into the business. He had no kids, so he treated me, like one of his own. And he was very influential with me in the business. My dad kind of stayed out of it. He didn't want to ruin the relationship between him and his brother, or his son and his mother. So he really stayed out of it. Most people don't know that, but my uncle's the one who came and got me. He's the one who brought me into the business, and he's the one who taught me a lot of the business. So I was young, go on road trips with him, sales calls, things like that. He was old school, but this is why we do this. We did this back in the day. It didn't work. This happened. Watch out for this. Things like that. And there's still some sayings today I can remember him, saying. And one of the first things him and my dad told me when I came into the business is, you're starting out in the shop. Our money's not made up here. It's made out in the shop, and it's still true to this day. We make decisions in the front office, right? But this is where our money's made and lost. And so, things like that kind of got me to focus on, what's the bigger picture of the business, the team aspect, the culture, and being able to have top to bottom people pulling in the same direction, how valuable that could be as a leader to you. So I would say my high school basketball coach, Dean Foster, my Uncle Monty were very influential. And I've always been very, very close to my mom, believe it or not, growing up. And she's played a very important role. Took me all over this country playing sports and things like that, but it was a lot of one-on-one time with me and her. And so she's always taught me very good manners, how to treat people, think about other, stuff I don't always think about. So I would say my parents, my uncle, my high school basketball coach were probably the three biggest influences on my life.
What about the last question? The kindest thing somebody's done for you?
Tough question, Craig. I would have to say some people took some chances on me in this world. My uncle came and recruited me, out of a banking role where I had a job and a stable career. He knew I knew nothing about manufacturing. He came and recruited me. He believed in me. My dad was open to the idea and the concept. So they gave me a chance, and they told me it was not going to be easy. My work was going to be cut out for me. So people believing in me and giving me a chance, I think, is one thing that's motivated me to continue to work hard in what I do. Because if someone else believes in you, I never wanted to let them down or waste that opportunity. So I would say that people giving me an opportunity or a chance and believe in me to do it, it's the kindest thing people have done for me.
Well, thank you for doing this, man. To be third generation family-owned business, and it's truly the path less traveled these days.
For sure.
It couldn't relate any more perfectly within the podcast name. So thank you for coming on, sharing your story, and honestly leaving us with a lot of just nuggets for young leaders out there.
Right.
So thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
Greg, thanks for having me.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of the Path Less Travel. My name is Craig Heatherly, the host, and really thankful to have Kyle Beaudway here of Industrial Metal Fab joining us. So have a great day, and we'll look forward to seeing you next weekend or next week. Take care.